If someone asked me to describe JoJo's bizarre adventure to them, it would be difficult. With it being a series that sports a variety of colorful characters, such as a hand-fetished, person-blowing-up psycho serial killer, or a laser-shooting, time-stopping British vampire, and an alien? These seem like cherry-picked examples, but this is nothing out of the ordinary for JoJo's. It is incredibly hard to compare JoJo's to any other form of media, let alone anime. With its abundance of dramatic posing, the characters looking like they are ready to walk down a runway, and a power system ridiculous enough to let a character have a magic pylon as an ability. The only thing to expect from JoJo's is the unexpected. Every character in the show is an absolute nutcase, and I love it. Not to mention the hilarious use of English in the series.
Oh, that's a baseball!
Or the blatantly strange things characters will say or do. JoJo's itself is a meme. It doesn't take itself seriously, and neither does its audience. But this is what has allowed JoJo's to ascend to a league of its own when it comes to creating a sense of community between everyone who watches it. The JoJo's community is honestly one of the most fun communities to take part in, with the countless inside jokes and references or the memification of everything inside of the show by the fans. And there's no better time to start watching rather than now, as a new challenger approaches. Episode 1. This new challenger is Jolyne Kujo, the lead of this next bizarre adventure and the daughter of the infamous Jotaro Kujo. A family connection that immediately endears Jolyne as a character to the audience, but father like daughter, Jolyne is introduced to us in police custody. But this is where their similarities end. While Jotaro put himself behind bars, Jolyne was instead caught in the act of a crime that she claims she didn't commit. Even in the way they both act, you can immediately tell the differences in their dispositions. Jotaro was introduced with a cool and badass persona, while Jolyne is introduced banging her head against a metal bed frame and being harassed by her fellow detainees. She was caught doing something by the morning guard, and is dying from embarrassment. What an on-brand and memorable introduction for a JoJo's main character, which also delivered a stark contrast between her and her father, Jotaro. Between now and Jolyne's trial, she is visited by her lawyer, who gives her a gift from her mother, something Jotaro put in his wife's safekeeping in preparation to give to Jolyne if she ever found herself to be in trouble. A charm that contains a picture of her family and a shard of a mysterious artifact. A shard she accidentally cuts herself on, something she quickly discards based on her distaste for her father. Many JoJo fans quickly recognized the shard as a piece of the arrow, an artifact with supernatural powers, and if it is to puncture a person's skin, they will be gifted with a stand ability. And thus Jolyne has just gained one of these abilities, which is the very outcome her father hoped for. On a prisoner transport bus, Jolyne is being taken to Green Dolphin Street Prison, the location of her trial and the destination of one of the prisoners who mocked Jolyne in the opening scene. Aramis Castillo, someone who will undoubtedly be important later in this season. But besides the introduction of Aramis, the real purpose of this scene was to introduce the ability of Jolyne's stand. An ability that allows her to seemingly hear people from incredibly far distances using a thread that she can control with great precision. An incredibly interesting stand that will hopefully be entertaining in the upcoming signature JoJo style stand battles. But before that can happen, we first learn the details of the crimes that Jolyne is being accused of, a DUI manslaughter and grand theft auto, which, as we learn, is very much not her fault, but instead the fault of Jolyne's boyfriend Romeo, as Romeo was the one who was driving under the influence as he crashed into and killed an innocent person. A quick side note, I'd like to point out the subtle touch that Romeo was driving an Alfa Romeo car. It doesn't add anything to the story, but I enjoyed this small detail. Anyways, Romeo manipulated Jolyne into staying quiet about his involvement in this incident and convinced her into helping him hide the body. But because Jolyne refuses to turn him in, her lawyer tells her the bad news, that she will likely be found guilty of these crimes due to the overwhelming evidence against her. So, her lawyer instead recommends she takes the plea deal that was offered to them. If she admits to her crimes, she will serve a maximum of 1 to 2 years in prison, versus the minimum of 5 years she'll be sentenced if she is found guilty. With no other options or time, she is forced to accept the plea deal and admit guilt. But to Jolyne's surprise, she was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Jolyne's lawyer forgot to mention one detail, being that the person Romeo and her had tried to hide was still very much alive and could have been saved if 911 was called immediately. But this person died because of their attempt to hide the body, resulting in Jolyne being charged with murder instead of manslaughter. Jolyne's lawyer was being paid by Romeo's family and had successfully framed Jolyne Kujo for murder, a secret that wasn't kept for very long based on Jolyne's ability to hear faraway conversations. But it is too little too late, and this is where Jolyne's incarceration of Green Dolphin Street Prison begins. FE40536, the new name given to Jolyne Kujo. Now, this scene is interesting, not just because of Jolyne's posing during the body search, but because of this. Tell me if you see anything wrong with this picture. This is Jolyne Kujo, and this is Jotaro Kujo. Alright, time's up. It's their last names, which are for some reason spelled differently. It is unlikely that the two people with the same last name just spelled differently would end up having a kid. So I guess that the spelling of Kujo was purposely changed by Jolyne or her mother. This is reasonable to assume because in this episode, Jotaro isn't particularly looked on with favor by his family due to him essentially abandoning them for his work. Besides recognizing the misspelling of Kujo in this scene, I wondered if there was any significance to the prisoner number she was given, which wouldn't have been surprising due to the large number of pop culture references in JoJo's. But after an extensive amount of research, I sadly found nothing. I don't believe this number would have been chosen for no reason at all, but this may just be me wanting it to mean something more than it actually is. If anyone has any guesses on the significance of this prisoner number, please leave a comment down below because I couldn't find anything. After this scene, Jolyne catches a glimpse of her lawyer in the prison as he finishes his business with the warden. The warden makes sure to hand over a note to him addressed from Jolyne, a note that reads, "Pass this on to him. Feeling comfy, but you will keep sweating now and forever. Signed, Jolyne Kujo." And only a moment later, one of Jolyne's threads begins strangling the lawyer, eventually leading him to crash his car into a wall, resulting in his death. Jolyne decided to commit the very crime that she was framed for: murder. I know this is only the first episode, but I am deeply interested in the character of Jolyne Kujo. Depending on the character she's interacting with, she acts completely different, seemingly being a girl who is naive and easily flustered in her introduction, to a romantic that is into all the lovey-dovey gushy stuff in her backstory with Romeo, then to the proactive and I'll do what I want attitude as she is told to strip by the prison guards, to the clever and cold-hearted nature in which she quickly kills her lawyer the first chance she gets. There are a lot of faces to Jolyne Kujo, and at this moment, I couldn't begin to guess which one is the real her. Episode 2. And this is when the season really starts feeling like JoJo's. I was kind of worried that this part wouldn't live up to the other parts in the vibe aspect. But not to worry, the JoJo psychopaths are back and they are crazy as ever. First up, we have the warden Rocco Barocco, or Loco Barocco, with an unorthodox design, and his trusty sidekick Charlotte, an alligator puppet that he uses to address the prisoners. But no time for that because we are ready for the next psychopath.
Who's that psychopath? It's Gwess.
Oh, what's that? It's Jolyne's cellmate? And her name's Gwess? Well, she seems kind of normal. Oh. Yeah, this is the first certified nutcase of the series so far. In the final scene of the previous episode, we see the same character holding the charm that Jolyne threw away, telling us she's probably a stand user, which Jolyne herself is delightfully unaware of, which is a fun way to create dramatic irony in this story. Actually, Jolyne doesn't even know her weird ability is something called a stand, nor others can have similar abilities, so that's kind of like a double layer of dramatic irony. But tension immediately starts to rise as Jolyne realizes that Gwess has the charm that she threw away earlier. Gwess reveals that she bought it off another prisoner, letting us know that there is likely another stand user somewhere in the prison. But while Jolyne is busy figuring out how much of a dick Gwess is, we as an audience are trying to figure out what her stand ability is. And this is honestly one of my favorite parts of JoJo's as a series. I love these crazy what-if scenarios and trying to decipher what a new enemy's ability is. And this is because they are never revealed in a conventional manner. Like, they could have just shown Gwess shrinking another prisoner, but instead they decided to show us this. And this. And it just makes the suspense and mystery so much better. Also, is no one going to mention how this is basically the same stand as the one in part 5? I think it's called Little Feet? No? Well, okay then. But like I said earlier, Gwess is a certified nutcase. She shrinks people down and then forces them to wear dead animals as costumes. And then they're supposed to be Gwess's pet? Like what? Gwess plans on using Jolyne to help her escape, but because she's a new stand user, she's unaware that the farther away from someone she is, the less effective her shrinking ability is, causing Jolyne to prematurely grow back into her original size, almost causing her to be caught by the guards. But now that Jolyne is back to her regular size, she's ready to dish out a knuckle sandwich to this psychopath. And man, was it both cathartic to see Gwess get her comeuppance and badass to see Jolyne pummel an enemy stand user in a similar manner to the JoJos before her. And the soundtrack, oh, chef's kiss. Not to mention, we finally get the full reveal of Jolyne's stand. For manga readers, her stand bears the name of a Jimi Hendrix song, Stone Free. But if you're watching the anime like myself, her stand is referred to as Stone Ocean, continuing the trend of naming the JoJo's part based on the main character's stand. For those that don't know, JoJo's stand abilities can usually have a physical manifestation that can only be seen by other stand users, which are often capable of moving things and physically fighting on top of the more specific abilities each one of them has. But these stand abilities are directly tied to their stand users, so if their stand is damaged, then the damage is reflected onto the stand user. This even includes Jolyne's threads. Throughout the story, it isn't uncommon to see Jolyne's threads to be cut, resulting in a small scratch showing up on Jolyne's body, making at first glance Jolyne's almost invincible stand seem much more vulnerable. Before we go on, I think it's necessary to talk about the colors in JoJo's. If Stone Ocean isn't your first experience with JoJo's, it shouldn't be anything new to see colors dramatically changing from a character's original design. But this is because Araki, the creator of JoJo's, claims that he likes to use color to represent mood and tone rather than representing a specific character design, using the idea that in the moment, with a lot of emotion or adrenaline, he will change the colors to help it have a bigger impact on the audience. And I think this is a brilliant and unique take on trying to convey emotion in your manga. And it's even greater that the animation studio decided to stay consistent with Araki's original take on the matter. And this drive to adapt JoJo's bizarre adventure to such a high standard with its voice acting, animation, and music is what has made this story's anime adaptation one of the best adaptations of any manga series to date. Episodes 3, 4, and 5. If the first episode was about setup and the second episode was about the general feel of JoJo's, then the next 3 episodes were about using these now established rules to drive the plot forward. To start, we have a little bit more exposition from Gwess, as she tells Jolyne about the rules of the prison. Oh yeah, a common trope in JoJo's is after the main character defeats one of these crazy stand users, they're now just friends for some reason. At least Jolyne is the first sensible JoJo to question this too. But anyways, Gwess tells us that everything in this prison is done with money. Prisoners can buy phone booth spots, bribe guards, and generally do whatever they want the more money they have, which explains why Aramis earlier was so desperate to smuggle in a couple $100s. But while Jolyne is busy ruthlessly extorting the money someone has previously borrowed from her, she notices something strange. A baseball rolling through the hallway and a little kid in a baseball uniform running after it. This kid cryptically tells Jolyne that she will have a visitor tomorrow at noon and she mustn't see the person at any cost, for if she does, she and many others will be in grave danger. And like that, he disappears without a trace. Honestly, this weirdness in JoJo's is to be expected at this point. But despite this mysterious kid's warning, Jolyne goes to the visitation room anyways. But before she enters, the kid gets her attention again, but this time from inside of a trash can, and gives Jolyne something that will protect her. A human bone?
What?
But with this, she enters the room to find none other than Jotaro Kujo. The man Jolyne despises for prioritizing his work over his family. In seeing her father, Jolyne immediately hits the guard as she states she'd rather receive disciplinary action than stay here for a second longer. But she hit the guard too hard in her anger, knocking him out, trapping Jolyne, forcing her to face her father. But before she gets the chance to say anything, Jotaro tells Jolyne exactly why he is here. Jotaro has come to break her out, telling Jolyne that she wasn't framed by Romeo and his family, but instead by a man named John Gallier, a fellow prisoner who orchestrated the accident and bribed the lawyer, all to get Jolyne into this very prison, all in the hopes that it would attract her elusive father that is now in this very room. The ultimate stand user, Jotaro Kujo, and his Star Platinum. Through Jotaro's travels, he has accumulated many enemies and grudges, and this is no different. John Gallier is a pawn of Dio Brando, the mortal enemy of the Joestar lineage, yet he perished over 20 years ago by Jotaro's hand. Even after all this time, Dio's ghost hasn't loosened his grip on not just Jotaro, but his bloodline, now including his daughter Jolyne. Yet, Jotaro, knowing that coming to this prison was a trap, he came here anyways, to save his daughter. Even after this shocking story, Jolyne refuses Jotaro's offer to escape, as she wants nothing to do with him. But before she gets the chance to leave the room, John Gallier has already put his crosshair on both Jolyne and Jotaro. And this upcoming fight between John Gallier and the father-daughter duo is okay. It's interesting with John Gallier being a skilled sniper that uses his stand ability to read air movements and deflect bullets to hit his targets from anywhere with uttermost precision, which actually makes a pretty interesting fight, but it's soured for me as it turns out to be a dream from the very beginning. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure usually gets away with using old story tropes because it usually does it in a unique and interesting manner, but this felt a little lifeless to me and a bit contrived. But thankfully we don't have to dwell on this for long because Jolyne somehow wakes herself up using the bone that the baseball kid gave her. Yeah, I don't really get it either. Anyways, when Jolyne wakes up, she sees that they and the entire room have been covered in a slime that has put them to sleep and is now slowly eating them away, clearly the work of another stand user. The slime itself has taken a majority of Jolyne's strength away, but using all the willpower she can muster, she was barely able to awaken the sleeping Jotaro. Jotaro, realizing they were all out of options, he uses all of his strength he has left to use his stand Star Platinum to deck Jolyne out of the room of slime. This is what they call a pro gamer move. I love this is what Jotaro immediately thought of in this predicament. But moving on, while Jotaro and Jolyne are trying to escape the prison, they run into John Gallier, but this time it isn't a dream. Now, I have a question. In this fight, John Gallier has the same stand as the John Gallier that was in Jolyne's dream. Why did the enemies purposely tell Jolyne what John Gallier's stand was in her dreams? Keeping your stand a secret gives you a ginormous advantage in a stand battle, and they didn't have to reveal his. Couldn't they have made up a different stand for John Gallier in the dream so that Jolyne wouldn't know what the real John Gallier is capable of? I guess you could argue that the stand user isn't able to manipulate dreams and Jotaro and Jolyne just were having normal dreams, but if that's the case, how did Jolyne know John Gallier's exact stand in her dream? Like, she only just learned that this guy existed 5 minutes ago. The last thing that could be an explanation is that they didn't care if they showed Jolyne his stand because they never expected them to get out of that room alive. I'm not really sure if there's an explanation for this one. But either way, back to the fight. John Gallier fires several bullets at Jolyne, forcing Jotaro to use his stand ability, an ability that can freeze time for a few seconds. But in this short period of time, Jotaro realizes that there's another stand hiding behind them. So, Jotaro is left with a choice to either protect his daughter from certain death or to protect himself from the stand lurking behind him. A decision that he didn't dwell on for long as he swiftly protected Jolyne from the bullet, allowing the stand behind him to land a fatal blow. I think. It wasn't clear in the moment. But the stand forced 2 discs to emerge from Jotaro's head, one that had a picture of Jotaro on it and a second one that had a picture of his Star Platinum on it. This mysterious stand takes these discs out of Jotaro, and without a second delay, John Gallier has his gun drawn again, firing bullets that ricochet off his stand, now flying towards Jotaro's falling body. Jolyne does what she can to block the bullets, but she didn't get all of them, leaving Jotaro to be riddled with holes, and in this instant, the second stand disappeared. Jotaro is left with an emotionless stare. He tells Jolyne to go on ahead and that he will be joining her shortly. An obvious lie. He gives her the charm again, telling her that it has a tracker in it that will help her escape, and most importantly, that he has always cared about her. But before any other words are said, Jean Gallier is ready to fire again, but this time Jolyne is prepared. Redirecting the bullets using her strings, and with a badass persona of her own, she pummels Jean Gallier in a way that can only remind me of Jotaro's Ora Ora Ora. Yet even though the stand user was defeated, Jolyne was too late as Jotaro is already on his deathbed. Or death wall? But after muttering some final words that fall silent on the audience, Jotaro passes away. Killed. A task that not even the once thought to be invincible Dio Brando was capable of. But this time is different. While Dio may have been significantly stronger than the opponents Jotaro fought here, Dio's belief in his superiority lost him the battle. He was confident he could beat Jotaro in a straight physical fight because he believed he was the strongest. While both Jean Gallier and this mysterious disc stand knew they never stood a chance against Jotaro in a fair fight. That's why they made him choose between his daughter and himself, proving that Jotaro really did care about his daughter. Remember earlier how I mentioned that it was weird that Jolyne and Jotaro have different last names? Well, I left out one theory I had for this moment. What if Jotaro purposely changed his wife's and daughter's last name to Kujo, not out of malice, but instead because he intended on protecting them? Jotaro understood that many people held grudges against him and his family would be in danger because of it. So he changed their last names to distance himself from them, knowing that their lives would be much better without him. But back to the present, Jolyne is seen dragging Jotaro's lifeless body in what can only be described as a heartbreaking scene. For a daughter who hated her father for his abandonment of their family to now be dragging his corpse only minutes after hearing Jotaro say the words that she wanted to hear the most. The loss of Jotaro is great, not just for Jolyne, but for the audience as well, as we have seen him through countless journeys both in part 3 and 4, traveling the world to overcome insurmountable opponents. So it's kind of poetic that he wasn't beaten with brute force, but instead he was killed protecting someone he cared about. And this person, his daughter, Jolyne, is now broken. Overcome with emotions that she didn't know she still had for her father. This sadness and anger in her heart forces her to stop in her place. She somehow finds the courage to walk away from her escape and back towards the prison. With determination in her eyes, she decides to go and find this mysterious stand user who killed her father. And with that, we are left with the ending scene of the 5th episode. The mysterious stand approaches Jean Gallier, who as of this moment is now knocking on death's door. And this is the conversation where we learn the name of this stand, White Snake. But White Snake didn't come here to save Jean Gallier. He instead came to protect himself. Episodes 6, 7, and 8. These next couple episodes are dedicated to expanding the JoJo friend group, also generally known as the Jo Bros. But this time that terminology doesn't really work, so we'll have to stick with Joho. We learned that the person who sold the charm to Guess was none other than Aramis Castillo, the prisoner who made friends with Jolyne in the 1st episode. She had found it shortly after Jolyne discarded it and developed a stand because of it. Her stand ability allows her to duplicate any object by putting a special sticker on it. This sticker perpetually appears on her hand no matter how many times she removes it, essentially allowing her to use it infinitely. An interesting thing about her stand is if the sticker is removed from the duplicated object, then the original and duplicate are forced towards each other to merge back into one singular object again. I actually am very much a fan of this stand. Out of all the stands in this part of JoJo so far, it's probably my favorite. It has a lot of incredibly interesting uses, not just by duplicating things, but by forcing things to move in a certain direction. Oh yeah, in Aramis' reintroduction, we also see this guy for the first time. He has a crazy stand that can reflect all the pain that he feels onto another person. And by no coincidence, he is a suicidal maniac, which serves to make a really fun fight scene between both him and Aramis. But the most important thing we learn in this fight is more information on the discs. We learn there are 2 of them, a disc that contains a person's memories and a disc that contains a person's stand. If either is to be removed from a person, then they will lose that thing respectively, but if both discs are removed, then it causes death. At least until one of the discs are put back into their head, meaning that it could be possible to bring Jotaro back to life if Jolyne was capable of getting her hands on both of Jotaro's discs, which I don't know if I like. I felt like Jotaro's death scene was pretty well done, so I'm skeptical about this plot point. But honestly, I have seen stands do way crazier stuff in the past, so bringing people back to life is not so much of a stretch. But back to Hermes, after defeating the stand user, a disc immediately exits his head. A disc of his stand. We learned in this section that this stand user was given his stand by White Snake. Apparently White Snake not only has the ability to steal memories and stands from anyone, but he can then also give them to others. In this instance, White Snake gifted this dude a stand, but it isn't unreasonable to assume that in the future we'll see White Snake giving people the memories of others. Wait. I doubt this is the case, but what if White Snake was capable of taking the disc of someone who is already deceased, such as a certain eccentric vampire? Am I on to something? Maybe. Anyways, the next recruit to the JoJo gang is Otro, and she's dead. What? How is she dead? She's in the intro and she hasn't done anything yet. Oh, okay. So a lot happens. Basically, Hermes and Jolyne get into a fight with a stand user. A stand user who is made of plankton? A stand user who is also its stand somehow? And its name is Foo Fighters. Honestly, I don't know how to describe this stand. But who needs explanations in JoJo's anyways? Pfft. So, Foo Fighters is in charge of guarding the discs that White Snake has stolen. Yet Foo Fighters has no direct loyalty to White Snake, so after being defeated, it decides to help Jolyne and co because... yeah. But because Foo Fighters looks like an alien, it decides to hide inside of the corpse of a certain character that died earlier. But yeah, I did not see that coming, so good job, JoJos. Welcome to the JoJo gang, Foo Fighters. Also, let me just say, even though I don't really understand it, I love Foo Fighters. Its whole character is that it doesn't know how to human, so it starts doing incredibly strange and funny things that could only ever be seen as normal in JoJo's. But besides that, because Foo Fighters was in charge of watching the discs, Jolyne can now get Jotaro's discs back. But there's a small problem. The Star Platinum disc is accounted for, but his memory disc is still missing. Foo Fighters says that the most valuable discs are kept in safekeeping by White Snake. Yet how come Star Platinum, one of the most powerful stand abilities of all time, was in the reject pile? Well, it's because to put a stand ability into a person that is not its original owner, it must first be compatible. And apparently it would be nearly impossible to find someone who would be compatible with this stand, making it useless to White Snake. But this leaves another question. Why was Jotaro's memory disc considered to be more important than the others? A question that may be revealed sooner than expected, as after the incident has concluded, the user hidden behind the mask of White Snake is revealed. Father Pucci. And man, doesn't JoJo love its crazy character designs. I am waiting for the moment where one of the major villains of an arc ends up looking like a completely normal person. I swear that would be a perfect plot twist because no JoJo's fan would see that coming. Episode 9. And in this episode, nothing important happens. Yes, we see Father Pucci smash someone's head into a table. Yes, Foo Fighters is the best. And yes, there was a JoJo stand battle that was also epic. But was there anything new? Not really. Well, I guess they made a bunch of money, but mostly this episode was just classic JoJo's fun, so we're moving on. Episodes 10, 11, and 12. Using the money gained in the previous episode, Jolyne is able to contact the Speedwagon Foundation so that they can retrieve the Star Platinum disc. The Speedwagon Foundation says that they can manage to pick up the disc in the prison courtyard in about 20 minutes. Leaving Jolyne to race against the clock, bribing officers and fighting stand users the entire way there. But en route, she runs into the baseball kid again, whose name is apparently Emporio, and he is useless. Whenever he shows up, he says, "Be careful," and then he disappears. Like, he knew the visitation room was trapped with deadly slime goo stuff, and instead of telling Jolyne what was in there, he decided to be cryptic for no reason, saying, "Don't go in there, it's dangerous." I don't know why I made him sound like a vampire. Like, I guess he has a vampire name and he kind of looks like one sometimes. But either way, I guess he was kind of cool because he introduced us to Weather Report. And also this person, but mostly Weather Report. Another nutcase and a new member of the JoJo gang who plans on getting his stolen memories back from White Snake. And I assume the reason that his name is the same as his stand name, being Weather Report, is likely because he has forgotten his original name ever since his memory disk was stolen. But man, is this dude a character. We are introduced to him sleeping inside of a piano. We are told that he only talks to people when he's really close to them, and he prefers to walk on his tiptoes. Despite his weird mannerisms, he has an amazing stand that allows him to control the weather. And together with Jolyne, he ends up facing the stand user, Langrangler. And together with Jolyne, he ends up facing the stand user, Langrangler, and his stand that allows him to produce an area with 0 gravity. Another fantastic and interesting stand battle, but not too much to say. Though I wasn't a fan of the CGI they added here and there, but that's really just a nitpick. After defeating the stand user, Weather Report is critically injured and Jolyne finds herself only a few meters away from the courtyard, but is stopped by Father Pucci. Jolyne at this point is still unaware of this man's true identity as she tries to reason with him, begging him to let her go into the courtyard for just a moment. Pucci, knowing that the Speedwagon agent will arrive soon, still surprisingly lets her go. But as Jolyne enters the courtyard, she sees a man standing there, someone that might be there to receive the disc. The man turns towards Jolyne and immediately shoots her. He is a prison guard whose memory has been manipulated by Father Pucci to shoot anyone that enters the courtyard. Father Pucci has beaten Jolyne without her ever knowing he was the stand user of White Snake. But at this moment, Weather Report, still inside of the building, musters the rest of his energy to call upon a storm to help the now fallen Jolyne. But this isn't just any storm. It's a storm raining poisonous dart frogs, which completely throws out what I thought Weather Report's stand could and couldn't do. But I guess he can just summon a storm of poisonous dart frogs now, frogs that may have technically helped Jolyne but also made things a lot harder at the same time. And what can only be described as a chaotic event in which the guard dies, Jolyne uses her threads to avoid being killed, and Pucci gets trapped and fails to stop the disc from being delivered to a Speedwagon Foundation carrier pigeon. One disc down, one more to go. And speaking of which, we learn of why this last disc has so much value to Pucci. Over 20 years ago, Pucci befriended a man from Egypt named Dio Brando who claimed he could reach heaven. He invited Pucci to eventually come and view the notebook that recorded his theory. But before he ever got the chance to read Dio's findings, he was killed by Jotaro and then his notebook was burned. So, Pucci's only chance of ever knowing more about what Dio had claimed was inside of Jotaro's memories. Now, JoJo isn't really known for its narrative consistencies, but there are a lot of problems here. One, by now Pucci has had Jotaro's memories for at least a couple days, so why hasn't he learned what Jotaro knows yet? He surely has a way to see the memories inside of the disc, or else he wouldn't have taken them in the first place. Also, why is it that Pucci just happens to have the most convenient stand in the world for his goal? If he literally had any other ability, he would not be able to ever see Jotaro's memories. It just kind of feels contrived. Speaking of his stand, why does it have so many abilities? He can produce a goo that makes people fall asleep and also drains their energy. He can steal and manipulate their memories. He can steal and give people stands, not to forget his favorite move, gun. He can just do a lot. I guess it isn't unlike other major antagonists in the show so far, such as Dio Brando or Yoshikage Kira, but still, his stand ability just feels deeply convenient and contrived. But from what I've seen so far, I don't believe he'll be the main antagonist throughout this part. I'm sure there is a much more competent villain waiting in the background, or at least I hope there is, because so far, Father Pucci is kind of meh. In this story, I have found myself loving the classic JoJo's appeal, such as the crazy character moments, the ridiculous stand battles, and its unique stylization. I ended up enjoying the main character a lot more than I originally thought I would, especially since the last JoJo, Giorno Giovanna, was so unexceptional. I am very sad that I watched all 12 episodes at a breakneck speed and missed out on the opportunity to savor them like a fine JoJo wine. So now you will find me patiently waiting for more episodes to drop. As of the time I am recording this, there have not been any announcements on when more episodes will be released, but I cannot imagine it taking terribly long. But when new episodes are released, I will definitely make another part to this review. Until then, I really appreciated this part for what it is, and I can't wait for more. Alright, just because I can, I wanted to share my thoughts on a couple things really quick. A few micro tier lists, if you will. Ahem. My top 3 favorite characters in this part so far, in order, are Weather Report, Jolyne, and Foo Fighters. Then my top 3 favorite stand abilities are Artemis's Kiss, Weather Report's Weather Report, and Jolyne's Stone Ocean. Also, I'm not including Jotaro in any of these lists because he would easily win most of them. Then, for my top 3 waifus, I would have to choose Gwess, yes I know I'm a psychopath, Jolyne, and Mirashon. Maybe, that might be how you pronounce it. And thus, those are my personal thoughts on what I liked about JoJo's Part 6 Stone Ocean so far. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe, it helps me out a lot. And with that, it looks like we are out of film.